Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished marketer from Bangalore, India, Mr. Sandeep Nair. Sandeep, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Sandeep is the marketing head of WinnerBrands. He's the former marketing director of Swiggy, and he's also formerly with Procter & Gamble as a brand marketer. So, Sandeep, before we get into WinnerBrands, tell me in brief your own journey as a marketer.
Thank you, Ashutosh. My journey as a marketer has actually been interesting because I didn't start out as a marketer. I was a hardcore engineer, and there is this trope that goes around in Indian circles that most Indian youth want to be an engineer first, not because they are really interested in the science or the trade, but because they are forced into it by their parents or their relatives.
Correct.
I was an exception. I really honestly wanted to be an engineer. And in fact, as we were discussing a little while ago, I worked for a bit in ISRO, and then started my career as an engineer with Tata Motors in their Pune plant as a line manager. But an interesting incident happened which actually changed the entire trajectory of my career. One of the first projects that I handled there was troubleshooting an RFID system. For those who don't know, it's a radio frequency identification device. The idea was to fix it onto engines, record all the information about the engine onto it, and then use it later for warranty purposes. The trouble was that this was a $2 million system, which was showing only about 60% of data integrity, which meant after the engine was assembled, only about 60% of the data was being captured. Now, this is a system that was paid $2 million for. And they had called all the engineers they could find. Everyone had come over, troubleshoot the entire operation and tried to figure out what was going wrong. They couldn't figure out what was the issue at all. So when the engineers actually stopped the line and ran the system, everything worked perfectly. The moment they left, the data integrity fell back to 60%. It was almost as if it was possessed. And I, as a rookie engineer, was asked to solve the problem, not because they had faith in me, but because they were about to give up. And they didn't know what to do with me at the time, what project to give me. So they said, no, you go and sort this out. I spent 2 months climbing up every single catwalk in the engine shop of Tata Motors Pune plant. I mean, I don't think, other than the engineers who actually set the system up, nobody knows the nooks and corners and crannies of that system as I do. I checked and rechecked every connection. I Googled everything I could learn about RFID systems. 2 months of extreme effort, no result at all. Finally, I was about to give up. And I honestly thought at that stage that I was going to be fired because this was my first job, first project, nothing is going right. But then I was having a conversation with a line worker one day, one of the factory workers who was working on that line. And he told me, we don't know what this system is. One fine morning, they came and told us we had to wait for 10 seconds after your work was done before the engine was allowed to be moved. But then we are paid on throughput, like the number of engines that you pass through your station in an hour. Every 10 seconds we stand idle is 10 seconds wasted. So we manually used to push the engines away. That's when it clicked for me. Because the RFID systems at that time, at least, and we are talking about 2008, actually needed the engine to stop after the work was done and wait for 10 seconds while the data was transferred accurately. Now, if you're going to push it away within these 10 seconds, of course, there's going to be a breakage. Of course, there's going to be data loss.
Interesting.
That's when I realized you had a $2 million system which was cleverly engineered and was state of the art. And it was laid to its knees by a single issue, which is not understanding the final end user of the system. The end user of the system was not the people sitting up in the engine shop offices, the air-conditioned offices. They were the people who were actually working in the sweltering heat of the engine room. That's when I realized that I was more interested in solving these problems, understanding consumer insights, understanding how systems interact with human beings on the ground, and how best to communicate what needs to be communicated to these consumers so that they do the right thing. Right? And I was more interested in that than in the engineering bit.
Fascinating.
That's how I started.
That's amazing. And as they say, the rest is history. But coming to WinnerBrands, tell me a little bit about what you do in this organization as the head of marketing.
So WinnerBrands is actually a platform for us to curate a community of marketers in India. It's we're excited about it because it's actually the first time anyone has ever tried this in India. There are such communities outside of India. So during my travels, I have met and interacted with a lot of these in the US, UK, Singapore, and even Southeast Asia to some extent. But in India, it's such a vast and complex network that everyone is pretty much operating in silos. And I'm not saying that marketers in India are doing a bad job. What I'm saying is we could as a collective do a much better job if we were to share and pool our resources and knowledge. That community doesn't exist in India today. And what we are trying to do at WinnerBrands is to curate this community through three pillars: content, courses, and careers. So content in the sense, like we create, and there are three of us who are working on this portion of WinnerBrands. We all love to teach. We are all taught at MICA, IIM Nagpur, IIM Lucknow, and a lot of other colleges and institutions. What we're trying to do is to build courses that actually help young marketers get upskilled in the art of marketing, in the applied art of marketing, rather than theory part of it. And once you have these marketers who are upskilled and at a much better level to do their job, then you have on the other side of the bridge VCs and founders who are in need of these marketers, who want to employ them at their organizations, and we act as a platform between them. So that's what we do at WinnerBrands.
Very interesting. And what are potential employers looking for when they're looking for a CMO? Because you're obviously getting all the marketing gurus onto your platform. You're obviously giving them lots of inputs.
Right.
And then you're off, you have all their bios and profiles available.
Right.
So
today there are three things that any founder looks for in a CMO. And I'm not going to talk about marketing knowledge of knowledge of fundamentals, because that's a given. The first thing, because of the nature of the times we live in, is a little bit of crystal gazing ability.
Yeah.
To understand what, we have, all of us as a collective species have gone through 2.5 years of upheavals in terms of consumer behavior changes. Right? Massive changes have happened in the way we shop, in the way we hunt for information, in the way we trust brands and other organizations, and finally in the way we repeat purchases. And this, like, if we buy something and try it out, do we go for a repertoire kind of behavior, or we do stay loyal to a single brand or not? So there are a lot of things that have changed. The question is, which of these changes are going to be temporary, and which of them are going to be a sustainable alternative behavior that humans will sort of evolve and adapt into over a period of time? And knowing that is critical for a lot of brands, especially in the consumer goods industry and in the startup space, to know where to pivot to, or know how at least to have some backup plans ready. And more CEOs are turning to CMOs to see if they know which of these consumer behaviors are going to last. So that's the first thing. The second thing is more of a business understanding. And this is more of an India issue than international, because the way especially startups are structured in India, and you will notice that my responses are more skewed towards startups these days, because that's the set of people I interact with most, and my previous life was CPG.
Right.
But in startups, there's this trend of having the marketing and the growth teams as separate units, right? And as a CPG veteran, that's an anathema to me personally, because I was trained at P&G, and in P&G, marketing and growth functions were pretty much the same. Marketing was supposed to drive sustainable revenue. That was all the marketing team was supposed to do, and so the growth team is supposed to do as well. So when you come to startups, there's this question of, okay, who owns what KPIs, and what is marketing responsible for? What is the growth team responsible for? Where do these skills overlap with each other? So today, more and more CEOs want marketers who understand P&L, who understand business, who understand and can have a conversation with the CFO about the business and how best to grow it, and how best to grow it sustainably, profitably, basically. So that's the second thing. And finally, the third thing is, today, because of the age skew that's happening, you are getting a lot of young people in senior leadership roles across the spectrum, and even in CPG companies. When that happens, you really need, as a senior leader, if you're a CEO or a board member or a VC, you really need to take a step back and think about the leadership abilities of these people. Some of those people have inborn, natural leadership abilities, in which case it's fine. But in a lot of the cases, you actually need to train these people. I mean, you don't really need to check them for fundamental knowledge availability. That'll be there. What needs to be checked for and trained for are leadership abilities, and that's going to be extremely critical, because you hear a lot of stories, and in my position, I get to hear a large number of stories of horror stories, rather, of team mismanagement issues, etc., that's happening in startups. I'm not saying it's confined to marketing alone, but I'm focusing my answer only on marketing. And a lot of it happens not because these people are inherently evil or bad. It's just that they haven't been trained, and leadership is not an inborn trait. Some people have it, that's great, but it is something that needs to be trained over a period of time. Earlier, we used to have situations where people could take smaller and smaller responsibilities as they grow in their career, make mistakes, learn from them, but the impact of those mistakes would be contained because of the relatively smaller team sizes. Today, that's not the case. Suddenly, a 26, 28-year-old growth marketer is responsible for a team of 10 or 20 of people.
Right.
A 35-year-old marketer has suddenly become the CMO of a startup and is responsible for a 150 strong organization, which has below the line marketers, agencies, stakeholders in other functions, etc. It's not natural to assume that all leadership traits and qualities would come naturally to them. So these are the three things that
very, very interesting. And my follow-up question to you, Sandeep, is that for a founder, when should they be able to differentiate between someone who they want for sales and someone who they want for marketing? Because in large companies, these are very clearly defined roles. For a startup, I'm not sure if they have the luxury of two different people.
This is a question I don't have a cut and dried answer to, because a lot of startups are, and a lot of startups, especially in the pre-series A funding stage, are in a position where they're exactly what you mentioned. You don't really have the luxury of defining specific roles for specific people. It's more of an amorphous structure and organization. So in these situations, what I always believe is that sales and marketing shouldn't be in silos and differentiated. Leaders should be able to handle both. And the reason why I say is this: all great brand building starts with understanding a consumer pain point, talking to these consumers, solving those pain points, and the third most important step in the initial stage, crafting a great consumer narrative that sells the value of the brand in a differentiated manner to these consumers. Now, that is just as much a responsibility of a marketer as it is of a sales leader. And if a marketer doesn't know how to communicate to a sales team, communicate to the final customer and how to sell that story to the customer, he won't be able to do what is basically called sales enablement. Enabling the sales leader to sell the story of the product or the service and to convert those into sales. Like today, what happens is a lot of young marketers trained in tier 1 and tier 2 colleges, including, unfortunately, IIMs, happen to think of themselves as these really elite, elite of the elite. We don't watch Big Boss. We don't watch reality TV shows. I only watch Emily in Paris, or I only watch cricket on Hotstar, and that's it. You can't do that. You have to get down onto the streets, and especially in a market like India, where tier 2 and tier 3 segments far, far outweigh tier 1 in terms of revenue potential. You have to go and talk to the consumers where they are. You have to walk a mile in their shoes. That's something that sales teams are quite well trained at, whatever be their vocation, whether it's in startups or in FMCG companies. And Unilever, for instance, in India used to have this program, and still do, where all management trainees, irrespective of whether they eventually will end up in marketing or sales are sent on what they used to call Bharat Darshan. I don't know what they call it today. But the idea was you would go to all these nooks and crannies and villages in India, work with the sales teams there, understand the problems of the consumers and the sales folks, and then bring that information back into the organization. There's an ulterior motive also there, which is as you climb up the leadership ring, ladder, so to speak, you move further and further away from consumers. So there was a lot of reverse mentoring happening in Unilever when all these young management trainees would come back and present their findings, and that's when senior leadership would actually understand, okay, so this is what's actually happening on the ground, and that's a great way to bring in fresh information into the system, right? So in that sense, I don't think marketing and sales should be separate. There are skill sets differences, of course, between the two, but I don't think that's massive.
I understand.
For us to create.
But also, Sandeep, if you look at the role of the CMO now, few things are beginning to change their roles dramatically. One is the incredible reliance on analytics, right? The second is this huge base of social media, which in the old days we used to have below the line and above the line marketing and advertising and communication, but now it's just one huge platform across multiple platforms. What is the kind of understanding, in your opinion, a CMO needs to have, which is much broader than, if I to use a silly example, to use Philip Kotler and marketing?
Right. That's becoming a cliche in marketing circles. No?
I know. I grew up when I did my business school in 79. It was Philip Kotler and marketing. So I'm just giving a silly example.
No, it isn't silly, because I am actually a firm believer in the 4P, 4Ps of marketing.
Yeah, I agree.
Promotion, place. And the part that actually surprises me is that there are still debates raging on. Like if you go, so I am someone who's two legs in both boats, if that's even a phrase, because I read a lot of Byron Sharp and Mark Ritson and professors like those, and they are the classic fundamentalists to some extent, where they consider 4Ps to be inviolable, not because it was written by some senior professor or guru, but because there is no reason to change what is working.
No, I agree with you.
On the other side, I'm on Twitter quite a bit, and there are these young SaaS founders, usually based out of Silicon Valley, who are proponents of what's known in the Twitter space as, or marketing Twitter space as, here are the 3 threads you need to read in order to understand everything you want to know about marketing without having to go to a university. I happen to think that's bullshit. But the fact is, it's an interesting question because, and this question arises because of the one thing which you just mentioned, just the complexity of the environment in which CMOs and marketers, like young brand managers, are operating these days. There used to be a time when you could know everything you wanted to know about your category and marketing in that space. And the only surprise would be, the percentage of discount that your competitor would run in the next month. You might not know what it is. If you had a really good sales team, sometimes you could guess it out earlier itself, but that's a different story. Today, that's not the case. Today, no one can reasonably be expected to know everything there is to be known about all aspects of marketing. So we talk about this T-shaped structure, right? We have gone from a situation where marketing was purely traditional to a situation where marketing was a traditional plus digital adaptation to a point where it is now digital first. When I started out, we used to have to present our campaign plans to our marketing directors during one of the tabletop reviews or whatever that might come in, whatever you want to call it. And I remember digital used to be a section with 5 slides at the very end of the deck after you have made all the important decisions about the campaign, and then would come digital. And that's when everyone, including the marketing director, could assume that, okay, all the hard decisions have been done. Now I can relax. It's just going to be fun stuff. there was a marketing director who asked me, "Hey, where's AR in this?" I was like, "What is AR?" He said, "Augmented reality." He said, "Why do we need augmented reality for selling shampoo?" This was back in 2012, where we
No,
were just taking
absolutely.
our baby steps. But the fact is, some agency had told him about augmented reality in a meeting just prior to mine, and he was so excited about it that he wanted to try it out.
I can imagine. I can
So
understand that. I can
where
understand.
that's where we were in the
Hmm.
Middle Ages, and now in the digital first age, things have changed. Three
Hmm.
things, right? One is on the consumer side, the second is on the distribution side, and the final bit is on the measurement side.
Hmm.
And these are the three changes that I've seen happening. On the
Hmm.
consumer side, what we have seen is the rise of the ant consumer.
Hmm.
And what I call the ant consumer is a consumer who now wants the best of both worlds.
Correct.
He or she has sort of developed into a system into a system where um, the entire world is available to him now.
Hmm.
Technology has democratized access to information so very well
Hmm.
that the benchmarks and expectations consumers have of brands have increased tremendously.
Hmm.
So even a tier two consumer in India or a
Hmm.
tier three villager in India now knows about Balenciaga, now knows about like MAN trucks in the
Yeah.
US,
Hmm.
and their standards have risen to that extent. So a Tata
Yeah.
Motors truck distributor who goes and tries to sell a substandard product to him would be shown a MAN truck in the US with their pure AC cabins and comfort of traveling, and say, "Why aren't you making something like this?" Right now, it's a different question whether that will work in this
Yeah.
market environment or not. But the
But the
standards and
customer is aware.
expectations
Yeah.
have increased. So
Hmm.
that's one. The second bit is this, and consumer now wants value. They are value seeking and status conscious. They are ecologically sustainable warriors, and they want consumerism. And they are activists, often armchair activists, but
Sure.
activists nonetheless. But they are also consumerists.
Hmm.
So this is a situation where the expectations and demands from the consumer side to a CMO have increased tremendously.
Hmm.
When it comes to distribution, we have gone from a purely broadcast mechanism of TV to a more interactive digital environment.
Hmm.
We have gone from a situation where everything was linear and straightforward. So you would look to Doordarshan and be fed whatever Doordarshan was broadcasting,
Yeah.
to a situation where people want curated experiences now.
Hmm.
So, is your content available on my Netflix channel playlist or on Spotify playlist? That's where we have gone to from a
Correct.
system where it's gone from institutions to individualized requirements of consumers from
Hmm.
different channels. So
Hmm.
now suddenly you have 15, 20 different channels to consider. How many channels will you be present on? How will you
Sure.
divide your media weights in
Hmm.
distribution between these channels? Finally, measurement. The granularity to which you can slice and dice data has increased exponentially.
Hmm.
The key metrics have not really changed. As a marketer, you're supposed to know your top of mind awareness. Often share
Hmm.
of search is a proxy for that. The conversion metrics down the funnel, retention, LTV upon CAC, and probably your marketing spend as a percentage of the total revenue. These
Hmm.
are the key
Hmm.
fundamental KPIs. There are
Hmm.
about 20 different KPIs on top of this that you
Yeah.
can measure
Hmm.
by slice, right?
Hmm.
Now, if you're going to measure every single KPI every single time, you're going to drown in data.
Right.
So how will you then decide which KPIs are relevant for your brand and which aren't, right? And at
Hmm.
what stage?
Hmm.
So top of mind awareness and share of search are more important than retention in the initial 90 days or
Hmm.
180 days or maybe 1 or 2 years of a brand's existence.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
after that, retention by 30 days, 60 days, 90 days is more important.
Hmm.
Revenue, ARPU, revenue per user is more important. So how do you decide which of these KPIs to track and measure? So on
Hmm.
the consumer level, on the distribution side, on the attribution and marketing side, results side,
Hmm.
things have become so complex
Very true.
that the CMO's life has become a
I
series of
agree. I
headaches.
agree. The life of a CMO is changing dramatically. But on that note, and I'm now running out of time, there is one other aspect, and maybe I'll ask you for a short comment on that, which is on from a consumer perspective, and young people like you, the first thing they look at are reviews.
Right.
For a brand manager, and I've been speaking to many, that's almost like a nightmare. that I
Yes.
must ensure that all my reviews are as good as possible. Otherwise, people won't even come and buy.
Right.
I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll end after that.
Sure. So I like to think of ratings and reviews as part of a bigger component, which has three parts to it. One, and this is all driven by mobile, right? And over the years, our life has shrunk into a 6-inch screen. So every piece of content that now you produce as a marketer has to fit into this 6-inch screen and look good on this 6-inch screen. It is now competing not against the ads of your competitors, but against Netflix, against Hotstar, your mother's phone call, Truecaller notifications, MyGate notifications, and even porn in some instances. So your content has become so much important to you in terms of connecting with the consumer, and it has to compete now with 100 other things.
Correct.
And what this has created on the consumer side is an issue of attention span versus consideration span, and something to do with the fact that there is so much information and choices out there that convenience has become a hostage of that. So in search of convenience, consumers are now willing to disregard choice. I don't think attention spans are reducing. In fact, that's maybe a controversial point, but I think consideration spans are reducing. If you're able to capture my attention in the first 2 or 3 seconds, I'm willing to give you 2 hours, 3 hours for even a podcast.
Correct.
Like Joe Rogan podcast is massive. It has 3 hours of content, but everyone listens to it. Consideration spans, on the other hand, are reducing. And the other bit is this choice part of it, right? Choice versus convenience. Because there are so many choices to be made, people want to rely on external heuristics, and these external heuristics are ratings and reviews. Like what has someone else said about this product? What's the make my trip rating of this particular vacation spot? It has become more important as an initial metric to explode your brand to PMF stage than at any other age in history. So there are agencies who specialize in gaming the Amazon ratings and review system for new brands in order to help them get a foothold in the industry. It is, so if it has come to that extent where people are willing to commercialize this, then you ought to understand that now ratings and reviews are the most critical part. The only way I've seen marketers can ethically work this system is to continuously solicit consumer feedback, not just on official platforms, but actually to go and meet with them directly and get their information, feed that back into the product.
Absolutely. Very well said. And Sandeep, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey, about a lot of thoughts you have on branding and how you are curating your own platform of WinnerBrands and how the CMO's role is beginning to evolve and change. Thank you also for talking to me at so much length about the RFID story that you started off with, which I thought was fascinating. And thank you also for all your thoughts on how consumer perceptions are beginning to change. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for inviting me to this channel.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.